I came home earlier than anyone expected. No warning, no sound, just me, the front door, and a silence that felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. And then I heard it, a quiet, broken sob echoing from down the hallway, the kind of sob that tells you something terrible has already happened. I followed the sound, slow at first, then faster, because something inside me already knew. When I pushed my daughter's door open just an inch, my heart dropped. She was sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, crying so hard she could barely breathe, not a single person beside her, not a hand on her shoulder, not one voice comforting her. And then, from the living room, came the sound that made my blood run cold. Laughter, loud, careless laughter, not nervous, not confused. The kind of laughter people share when they feel safe, when everything is perfect. My daughter was breaking, and someone just a few steps away was laughing like nothing in the world was wrong. I walked into the living room, and there they were, my brother leaning back on the couch, drink in hand, feet up, relaxed like he owned the place. And beside him, my wife, pretending everything was normal. They didn't ask where my daughter was. They didn't care why she was crying. They just kept laughing. In that moment, something inside me didn't just snap. It sharpened. I realized my daughter wasn't crying because of something that happened at school, or outside, or somewhere else. No. She was crying because of something that happened inside this house, around these people. And as I stood there, watching them laugh while she shattered in the next room, I understood exactly what I needed to do next. My name is Daniel Cooper. I'm 44, a mechanic in a small town where everybody knows everybody, or at least thinks they do. My daughter, Lily, is 12. Quiet, gentle, the kind of girl who cries when a butterfly hits a window. My wife, Carrie, is 38, always trying to keep peace even when it's costing her pieces of herself. And my brother, Chris, he's the complete opposite. Loud, confident, charming on the outside. The kind of man people trust too quickly and regret even faster. As I stood there watching him lean back on my couch, drink in hand, it hit me how comfortable he looked. Too comfortable, like he had been here for hours. Like this was his home, not mine. Carrie sat beside him, hands locked together on her lap, eyes darting between us like she was afraid of what I might say. That alone told me something wasn't right. She'd only look like that when she was hiding something, or when she knew something that was going to hurt me. Lily's muffled sobs from down the hallway kept cutting through my thoughts like a knife. Every sound she made felt like a small tear inside my chest. Chris didn't flinch, not once. He didn't even glance toward her room. Instead, he smirked at me, lifted his glass and said, "Man, you're home early. Didn't expect you." His tone wasn't brotherly. It was intrusive, like he wasn't surprised, as only annoyed that I had walked in at the wrong moment. Carrie tried to smile at me, but her lips were trembling. She looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally. Her face had that drained look people get when they've been trying to hold something together with their bare hands and failing. She opened her mouth like she wanted to explain something, anything, but then stopped. She glanced quickly at Chris, and he raised an eyebrow, almost like he was warning her to stay quiet. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. Something had been happening here, something involving my daughter, something involving my wife, and something my brother definitely didn't want me to find out, but I wasn't going to push it yet. Not until I knew exactly what I was walking into. So I nodded slowly, pretending I was clueless, pretending I didn't hear my daughter crying her heart out in the next room. Because sometimes, to uncover the truth, you have to act like you haven't seen anything at all. I walked past the living room without saying another word. I didn't need to argue. Not yet. Lily came first, always. When I reached her door and pushed it open gently, she lifted her head and wiped her face quickly, like she was trying to erase the truth before I could see it. "Dad, you're home." she whispered, her voice cracking. She forced a smile. But the moment her eyes met mine, the smile collapsed. She looked like someone carrying something far too heavy for a child to bear. I sat beside her, slowly, making sure she didn't feel cornered. "Hey, what happened?" I asked softly. She shook her head hard, refusing to even look at me. "Nothing," she said, the classic answer kids give when the truth is too painful to say out loud. I reached out to touch her shoulder, and she flinched, not violently, but enough for my heart to twist. That tiny recoil told me more than words ever could. Something happened, something that made her feel unsafe right inside her own home. Before she could try to speak or cry again, Carrie suddenly appeared at the door. Her face was pale, panicked, like she had run down the hall the moment she realized I went to check on Lily. "Daniel," she said with a shaky breath, "can we talk privately?" She kept glancing at our daughter, almost begging her not to say a word. That alone confirmed it. There was something they both knew, and something they didn't want me to know. Not yet. And then, of course, Chris appeared behind her, leaning on the doorframe like he owned the hallway. "Let the kid rest," he said casually. "She's just being dramatic." Dramatic. My daughter was shaking on the floor, eyes swollen from crying, and he had the nerve to call her dramatic. The way he looked at me, confident, dismissive, almost superior, made every muscle in my body tense. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't defensive. He was annoyed. Annoyed that I was home. Annoyed that I was asking questions. Annoyed that the truth was getting too close. I took a breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Let's all go back to the living room," I said quietly, looking right at Chris. "No secrets, no whispers." Carrie swallowed hard. Lily's eyes widened. And Chris, he smirked. That smirk told me everything. Whatever had happened here, he thought he had control over it, but he didn't. Not anymore. We all walked back to the living room like strangers forced into the same small space. Chris dropped onto the couch again, legs crossed, swirling the last of his drink as if nothing in the world bothered him. Carrie sat at the far corner, shoulders tense, fingers twisting in her lap. I stayed standing, not by choice, but because sitting felt wrong. Every part of the room felt wrong. The air was thick, heavy, like the truth was floating just above our heads, waiting to be dragged down. "I think we should talk," I said firmly. Carrie's eyes darted toward Lily's room, like she was terrified the walls could hear us. Chris, on the other hand, grinned. "Talk about what, Danny? Your kid crying again?" he said, shrugging. "She's always been sensitive." Sensitive. The word cut deeper than he expected. Lily wasn't sensitive. She was gentle. And kids like her don't cry that way unless someone breaks something inside them. Carrie leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Daniel, please. It's been a hard day. Maybe we should discuss this later, after Chris goes home." That sentence struck me like a punch. After Chris goes home? Why would we wait for him to leave to talk about our own daughter? And why was she asking him with her eyes, not me? I looked at her face, covered in guilt, and then at him, covered in arrogance. The contrast was loud enough to scream. Then Lily appeared in the hallway, silent as a shadow. She stood there barefoot, hugging a pillow, her face still red from crying. When our eyes met, she shook her head almost imperceptibly. Not a big shake, a tiny one, full of fear. It wasn't "don't yell," it wasn't "don't scare Mom." It was something deeper, a plea, a warning. Chris noticed her and sighed dramatically. "See? Now she's eavesdropping. This is exactly what I was talking about." Talking about what? Since when was he discussing my daughter behind my back? His expression wasn't annoyed anymore. It was irritated, the kind of irritation people show when their control starts slipping. And in that moment, I understood something important. Whatever happened, whatever caused Lily to cry that way. Chris didn't want me to hear it, and that meant only one thing. He was involved. Lily took a small step toward us, still holding the pillow like a shield. Her lips were trembling, but her eyes had that look, the look kids get when they finally gather the courage to speak. "Dad," she whispered, barely audible. He... But before she could finish, Chris slammed his glass onto the table. Not hard enough to break, but hard enough to jolt everyone in the room. "Oh, come on," he snapped. "We're really doing this. She's a kid, Danny. She overreacts over everything." Lily flinched, shrinking into herself. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Kids don't recoil from people they trust. They recoil from people who make them feel unsafe. Carrie stood up quickly, her hands shaking as she reached for our daughter. "Sweetheart, maybe this isn't the time," she whispered, voice cracking. But Lily stepped back from her too, not in anger, but in fear. Fear so subtle and so heartbreaking, it made my chest tighten. I moved closer to Lily, keeping my voice soft. "You can tell me, no matter what it is, I'm right here." She opened her mouth again, tears rising. "Dad, But just like before, Chris cut her off, this time with a laugh that felt like sandpaper against skin. "Seriously, you're going to let her ruin the evening with some fantasy?" His tone wasn't annoyed anymore. It was hostile, defensive, and Carrie's eyes dropped to the floor like she couldn't bear to watch what was happening. That was when I realized something deeper. This wasn't the first time she tried to speak. The fear in her eyes wasn't new. The tremble in Carrie's voice wasn't sudden. The tension in this house didn't start today. It had been building, quietly, silently. While I worked, while I trusted, while I believed everything at home was safe, I felt a wave of guilt crash over me. How long had she been trying to tell someone? How long had someone been shutting her down? I turned slowly toward Chris. He straightened up, jaw tight, eyes locked on me with a challenge I could finally see clearly. This wasn't irritation anymore. This was panic wearing a cheap mask. He knew Lily was close, dangerously close, to exposing something he desperately wanted buried. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't about a cry. This wasn't about being sensitive. This was about the truth. And the truth was suffocating this house. I stepped in front of Lily, placing myself between her and Chris, not aggressively, protectively. "Enough," I said, my voice low but steady. Chris leaned forward on the couch, elbows on his knees, that mocking grin still on his face. "Enough of what, Danny? Enough of your kid making up stories, or enough of you trying to be the hero in front of your wife?" He said it like a joke, but there was something in his eyes, something sharp, something cornered. Carrie pressed her hands over her mouth, shaking her head. "Please, both of you, stop," she whispered, but Chris ignored her completely. He stood up slowly, taking a few steps toward me. "Look, man," he said, lowering his voice like he was being reasonable. "You're overreacting. Lily doesn't understand adults. She probably misunderstood something." That was when Lily grabbed my sleeve, her fingers trembling. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. That one touch screamed for help. I kept my voice calm but firm. "Let her talk." The room froze. Carrie's breathing hitched. Chris's smile vanished entirely. He stared at me like I had just crossed some invisible line he never thought I'd cross. "Daniel," Carrie said, voice barely holding itself together, please don't force this." She wasn't pleading for peace. She was pleading for time. Time to stop Lily. Time to stop the truth. Lily swallowed hard, wiping her face. "Dad, I tried to tell Mom, but she said not to make trouble. And he said..." Her voice cracked mid-sentence. Chris took 2 quick steps forward, pointing at her. "No, you stop right now," he snapped. It wasn't a request. It was a command, sharp, angry. And, for the first time, his mask slipped. The charm was gone. The confidence was gone. What stood there now was fear. I stepped forward too, blocking his path completely. "Touch her and I swear!" He raised his hands. "Relax," he muttered, but his tone was anything but relaxed. He wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid of what she was about to say. Lily's voice shook as she whispered again, "Dad, it's about what he did when you were gone." And Chris's entire expression changed, not to guilt, not to shame, but to pure, unmistakable panic. Lily clung to my sleeve like it was the only safe place left in the world. She took a shaky breath, eyes darting between me and Chris. "Dad, it happened when you weren't home. He came into my room and—" She didn't get to finish. Chris stepped forward so fast the floor creaked beneath him, his voice exploding. "That's enough." His anger wasn't casual this time. It wasn't arrogance. It was fear, raw and unfiltered. Carrie covered her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking. "Oh God, please stop, please," she whispered. She wasn't defending him. She wasn't denying anything. She was unraveling completely. And that told me one thing with absolute certainty. She knew what Lily was trying to say. She knew. And she had been living with that knowledge like a weight pressing on her chest. She looked at Chris with eyes full of guilt and something close to disgust. I turned to Lily, who was crouching slightly. "Hey, you can say it. Whatever it is, I'm here. I'm listening." She opened her mouth, tears streaming. "He came into my room and he said—" She squeezed her eyes shut, like the memory itself burned. "He said I shouldn't tell you things and that it would ruin everything." She grabbed my arm. "He scared me, Dad. He really scared me." My jaw tightened, the room tilting for a second. This wasn't small. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was something calculated. Chris laughed. A shaky, forced laugh that didn't match his eyes at all. "Oh, come on, Danny. I checked on her because she was crying earlier. I was being nice. She's twisting everything as usual." His voice tried to sound calm, but the tremor in his words betrayed him. He wasn't defending himself. He was buying time. He knew Lily was moments away from exposing something that would bury him. Carrie finally stood up, tears spilling. "Chris, just stop," she said, voice trembling. "Please, stop talking." He turned on her instantly. "Don't you dare," he snapped. "You know what happens if—" He froze mid-sentence, realizing he had said too much. And that was when I saw it, the look on Carrie's face, the look on Lily's, the look Chris tried to hide. I wasn't looking at random tension. I was looking at a secret this house had been choking on for weeks, maybe months. And as the pieces fell into place, one by one, a truth colder than fear settled into my bones. Lily took another step toward me, her voice trembling but clearer than before. "Dad, he didn't just come into my room." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "He told me that if I ever said anything to you, you'd get mad at me, not him." My heart dropped. Kids don't invent lies that complicated. Kids don't talk like that unless someone carefully planted fear inside them. And the way her voice cracked, it sounded rehearsed, repeated, like something she had been told more than once. Chris stepped forward, hands raised like he was the victim. "Danny, listen to me. She's twisting everything." I was helping her calm down. "She's emotional. You know how kids are." But his eyes betrayed him, dark, cornered, calculating. Lily shrank back the moment he moved, clutching my arm again like she was afraid of what he would do. That reaction wasn't from emotion, it was from memory, a memory she didn't want to relive. Carrie broke down completely. She slid to the floor beside the coffee table, covering her face, sobbing uncontrollably. I tried to make him leave," she cried. "I told him to stop coming. I told him it was too much. I tried. Daniel, I swear I tried." Her voice dissolved into a gasp. I stared at her, confusion mixing with anger and disbelief. What had she seen? What had she allowed? What had she tried and failed to stop? I looked back at Lily and she whispered, "He said you wouldn't believe me, that you always take his side." That hit harder than anything else, because deep inside, part of me knew it was true. I had defended Chris too many times. I had told Lily he didn't mean things that way. I had told her to be patient when he teased her. I had told her family is family, and Chris knew it. He had used my own loyalty as a weapon against my daughter. Chris lifted his chin, trying to regain control. "Danny, use your head. This is getting ridiculous. You're going to trust a crying kid over your own brother." He smirked, but it was weak, a smirk built on fear. And that was when Lily took a deep breath and finally said the sentence that shattered the last piece of doubt inside me. "Dad, he told me to keep the door open when I changed clothes, because he needed to make sure I wasn't hiding anything." The room fell silent. Chris's smirk disappeared. Carrie stopped breathing for a second, and I felt something inside me go cold, colder than fear, colder than rage, colder than grief. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a child being emotional. This was a man crossing a line so dangerous that even hearing Lily describe it made my stomach turn. And as Chris opened his mouth to speak again, desperate to twist the narrative one last time, I realized that the truth Lily held inside her was much bigger than anything she had said so far. Chris's face twisted the moment Lily said those words. The mask he had been wearing all evening, charm, confidence, mockery, shattered in an instant. "She's lying," he barked, pointing at her with a shaking hand. "She's making this up to get attention." But the crack in his voice betrayed him. He wasn't arguing anymore. He was panicking because he knew Lily had just stepped into territory he couldn't talk his way out of. Carrie sobbed harder, her body folding into itself like she couldn't hold the weight anymore. "Daniel, I'm so sorry," she whispered, eyes red and terrified. "I tried to keep him away from her. I told him she needed privacy. I told him not to go near her room. I told him over and over." She pressed her forehead against her knees. "But he wouldn't listen. He said he had a right to check on things while you were gone." Her voice broke completely. "I should have done more. I should have protected her." Lily stepped closer to me, gripping my arm tightly. Her voice was barely more than a tremor. "Dad, the day you left for work early, he came in when I was getting dressed. I told him to leave, but he didn't. He leaned on the door and said he needed to see if I was hiding something." She swallowed hard. "I was scared, Dad. I told Mom afterward. She believed me, but she told me she didn't know how to make him stop." Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know what else to do. My heart felt like it was being crushed inside my chest. Every word Lily said hit me like a blade, not because I doubted her, but because I realized I had failed to see any of it. I had trusted the wrong person. I had defended the wrong person. I had welcomed a threat into my home, and my own daughter had been the one paying the price. I looked at Chris, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw exactly who he truly was. Not my brother, not family, a predator hiding in plain sight. Chris tried one last time to regain control, his voice rising into a desperate shout. "Danny, don't be stupid. She's manipulating you. You know how kids are." And that was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped completely. I didn't yell, I didn't lunge, I didn't lose myself. I simply said, in the coldest voice I've ever heard come out of my own mouth, "Get out of my house. Right now." The silence that followed was so heavy, it felt like the walls themselves were listening. Chris stood there for a long second, stunned that I wasn't yelling, screaming, or throwing him out by force. He wasn't prepared for calm. Calm is what terrifies people like him, because it means the decision is final. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, realizing there was nothing he could say that would fix the truth he tried so hard to bury. Slowly, he backed toward the door, muttering curses under his breath, but not loud enough to sound brave, just loud enough to sound scared. When the door finally closed behind him, the silence that filled the house wasn't the heavy, suffocating one from before. It was different, fragile, tender, the kind of silence that follows the end of a storm. Carrie sank onto the couch, crying into her hands, apologizing over and over. She wasn't defending him. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was broken by the guilt of not being strong enough to stop him, and by the relief that it was finally over. Lily came to me, wiping tears from her cheeks, her voice barely a whisper. "Is he gone?" she asked. I nodded, kneeling in front of her so she could see my face clearly. "He's not coming back," I said. She fell into my arms, sobbing in that way people do when their body finally believes it is safe. I held her tightly, wishing I could take every moment of fear she endured and carry it myself, and in her small voice, trembling against my shoulder, she said the words that shattered me completely. "I knew you'd believe me. I just didn't know when." Later that night, when the house was finally still, Carrie sat beside me with swollen eyes. "I should have told you sooner," she whispered. "I just didn't know how to confront him, and I was ashamed I couldn't protect her alone." I didn't excuse her silence, but I did understand it. Fear does strange things to people. It silences, it paralyzes. But now, that fear was gone. What mattered was that Lily was safe, and Chris was out forever. The next morning, I filed a restraining order. I changed the locks. I told every family member exactly what happened. Some were shocked, some were angry, some tried to defend him, until I told them what Lily had said. After that, no one had anything left to say, and for the first time in a long time, our home felt like ours again. Not a place of secrets, not a place of danger, a place where my daughter could finally breathe. And before we close this story, if what happened here touched you, if you've ever felt ignored, overlooked, or betrayed by the people who should have protected you, then you need to watch the story now, appearing on the left of your screen. It's about a son who buried his father completely alone. No family, no friends, no goodbyes. A week later, the lawyer knocked on his door with a document that revealed something so shocking it changed everything, and made everyone who abandoned that man regret it for the rest of their lives. Trust me, you don't want to miss how that story unfolds.